Hi everyone, here we are back for Ways of the World, a brief global history with sources. And today we're going to start our study of the worlds of the 15th century. And we're going to start with societies and cultures of the 15th century. All right, the meeting of two worlds. This 19th century painting shows Columbus on his first voyage to the New World. He is reassuring his anxious sailors by pointing to the first sight of land. In light of its long-range consequences, this voyage represents a major turning point in world history. How does this painting portray Columbus's relationship with his sailors? Is this a realistic portrayal, or is it influenced by the painter's perspective given its replacement and the time that it was painted? This painting depicts a confident Columbus reassuring his anxious sailors. In reality, Columbus had miscalculated the distance to his destination, so he likely would not have been as confident in his abilities this far into the voyage as what's depicted here. As such, this image clearly reflects the 19th century artist's hindsight. All right, Paleolithic persistence, Australia and North America. Gathering and hunting societies, Paleolithic peoples, still existed throughout all of Australia, much of Siberia, the Arctic coastlands, and parts of Africa and the Americas. Example of the Australian hunter-gatherers were some 250 separate groups. They'd assimilated outside technologies and ideas, for example, outrigger canoes, fish hooks, netting techniques, artistic styles, rituals, and even mythological concepts. And they had not adopted agriculture. They manipulated their environment through fire-stick farming, and they exchanged goods over hundreds of miles, so trade was prevalent. And they developed sophisticated sculpture and rock painting. Now, the northwest coast of North America developed quite differently. There's an abundant environment that allowed development of a complex gathering and hunting culture. They had permanent villages, considerable economic specialization, hierarchies that sometimes included slavery, chiefdoms that dominated these ranked societies, and extensive food storage. Elsewhere, farming had advanced and absorbed most of the Paleolithic lands. All right, agricultural village societies, the Igbo and the Iroquois. Now, predominated in much of North America, tropical South America, and the Caribbean, parts of the Amazon River Basin, Southeast Asia, throughout Pacific Oceania, and Africa south of the equator. Now, the example of forested region in present-day southern Nigeria, by the 15th century, the Yoruba and Bini people had begun to develop small states and urban centers. The Igbo peoples had a dense population and trade, but purposely rejected kingship and state building. The Igbo instead relied on title societies, women's associations, balanced power between kinship groups, and hereditary ritual experts to create a stateless society. The Yoruba and Bini and Igbo peoples traded among themselves and beyond, and the region shared common artistic traditions, and all shifted from matrilineal to patrilineal systems. In what is now central New York State, agricultural village societies underwent substantial change in the centuries before 1500. Iroquois speakers had become fully agricultural, particularly maize and beans, by around 1300. There's extensive population growth and emergence of distinct peoples. And the rise of warfare is key to male prestige. Perhaps since women did the farming, males were no longer needed for getting food. And warfare triggered the creation of the Iroquois Confederation. Some European colonists appreciated Iroquois values of limited government, social equality, and personal freedoms, even for women, that then show up later in the U.S. Constitution. All right, Iroquois women. This 17th century French engraving depicts two Iroquois women preparing a meal. Among the Iroquois, women controlled both agriculture and property and had a significant voice in public affairs. So based on the evidence in this image and your knowledge of world history, how do the roles of women in Iroquois society compare to those of women in other societies of the period? Well, this image depicts two Iroquois women, as I said, preparing a meal and simultaneously caring for a child. In that respect, this image demonstrates similarities in gender roles across hemispheres. Nonetheless, we also know that Iroquois women had a different social standing than those in most of the rest of the world. Iroquois agriculture and property were controlled by women, and descendant was matrilineal. All right, pastoral peoples, Central Asia and West Africa. Turkic warrior Timur, or Tamerlane, tried to restore the Mongol Empire circa 1400. His army devastated Russia, Persia, and India, but he died in 1405 while preparing an invasion of China. His successors kept control of the area between Persia and Afghanistan for a century, and Timur's conquest was the last great military success of the Central Asian nomads. In the following centuries, the steppe nomads' homeland was swallowed up by expanding Russian and Chinese empires. African pastoralists remained independent from established empires for several centuries longer, until the late 19th century. An example of the Fulb was the West African largest pastoral society. It was a gradual eastward migration after 1000 CE. They usually lived in small communities among agriculturalists where they grazed their cattle. There are tense relations with hosts due to the Fulb sense of cultural superiority. And there's a gradually adoption of Islam. And some moved to towns and became noted religious leaders. And there's a series of jihads in the 18th and 19th centuries that created new states ruled by the Fulb. All right, here are modern Fulb herdsmen. This photo shows modern Fulb herdsmen from Nigeria tending to perhaps their most distinctive animal, the longhorned cattle. Wealth in many pastoralist groups is reckoned through the size of cattle herds. So based on this photo, what major continuities can be noted in the pastoral lifestyles? What changes do you notice? The pastoralists shown here continue to herd and move with cattle and use generally pre-modern tools. Their dress, however, is distinctly modern. The man to the left, for example, wears Western jeans and a shirt. And that concludes our study of societies and cultures of the 15th century. I will see you guys next time for civilizations of the 15th century.